had a like booth at like a con or something where we were showing off a game, and all the kids did not know how to use a mouse and keyboard. So they put a controller there, and then they took away the controller and they touched the screen because they thought it would be a touch screen.
Yeah, no.
I don't know how much I believe that.
At ChargerCon, remember we had some really young kids, like high school age. They came to try and play Counter-Strike with controllers for a Wingman tournament.
That.
Yeah, we had
but
to
I
supply
was
them
just
with mice and
my
keyboards.
tournament.
Yeah, it was really bad.
I remember somebody showed up with a controller to play something.
Yeah.
I remember, no, it must have been down here. I remember the Rainbow Six Siege guys I talked to.
Oh, yeah,
One was playing with a controller. That was crazy. One of those people are like...
No, half of them are
trolled
console
their friend.
players.
I'm not that surprised about Siege. My friend, my roommate, is a console player for Siege. I can't believe I called him my friend. Ugh. Roommates is friends.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Gray on Valorant was also a console player for Siege, and he got to like Diamond or something.
Pete played Siege on console.
Yeah, I believe that too. All right, you ready?
Hang on, let me finish. Okay.
Yeah, stop your. You can finish your
biting.
waffling. You ready?
Yes.
Sweet.
Okay.
All right, folks, we're back again. Episode 2 of what we now have a name for. It is the Tier List Show. Super boring, but hey, it's better than not having a name at all. It is all tier lists. Eventually, until we branch out to something, we'll see.
Until eventually we start complaining.
Yep. Amen. Okay, so today, this is the long-awaited software tier list.
Hot takes. Hot takes.
Absolutely not hot takes. They're all going to be accurate.
They're all accurate, and that they're all the exact same industry hot take of it's all terrible.
Yep. And anyways, this will be a nice and short episode unless we decide to elaborate on things. And as you'll see up there, we changed the tiers around because we felt it fit the bill better. So first up, we have usable. It's software that's usable.
It doesn't make me want to kill myself.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have D tier. Then we have trash tier, which means it's unusable. You just cannot do anything with it.
Like, you open it and you regret opening it because you would rather have just not opened it.
Or you regret buying the thing that uses the software.
Yes, it actually ruins the product.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, we have no usage. No usage means that neither of us have touched it before, but we're still going to make assumptions based off of it.
We're going to use that as basically an overall of like, don't do this with your software. Instead, move towards this, please God.
Yeah, exactly. So without further ado, Cooler Master.
No experience with Cooler Master from me.
Yep.
I've only got experience with like half of these, so it's going to be a lot of just commentary on the industry.
I imagine it's pretty bad, but it stays in no usage for now.
It's a popular one, and it's also Cooler Master, so immediately I'm just thinking it just does nothing but fan control.
Exactly. Fan control or like RGB for your case, or like maybe even power supply because they make power supplies. Their peripherals have like notoriously always been pretty mid and like budget tiers. I don't know why they would have peripheral stuff on there.
It probably changes DPI.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to do anything else other than like let me customize my buttons.
You know what? No, Corsair released a mouse that was half decent recently. And I bet the software wasn't half bad. It like the CM.
Well, it all just uses IQ. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
Save that one.
All right. So now this is something you brought up, and I'll let you talk more about it. I'm gonna put this in usable. So for the record, neither of us have used this.
But we know what it's supposed to be like because
Yes.
we've used one that's similar.
Yeah, and we'll get to that one later specifically. But go ahead.
The future of your software needs to be online. So instead of making me download some dumbass software, which is unusable, like is in basically 2 more logos from now.
Yep, and is complete bloatware essentially.
Yep.
Like does nothing and then kills your computer's resources.
How's about we just move our software since it's already proven that it's pretty much possible and you're already saving all my settings on the mouse? Why don't we just move it online?
Mm-hmm.
It solves so many problems. It solves the driverless problem of I can't install a driver for all my stuff because I play LANs and I have to go to everything. You can just access it online. You can adjust your stuff like from whatever computer you're at, and it'll already be saved in your mouse anyway, so you don't even technically need to do it. You don't have to download garbage-ass drivers like every single time. The one issue I can think of is like actually updating like the firmware for something because I've not experienced that. That could be a problem. But like,
going through,
I'd rather have that as a problem than trying to change my DPI and having to go through 7 different like boots and asking me to restart my computer, Razer, every single time I want to change my fucking DPI.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go. We're gonna skip to Wu-Tang. Obviously, it's halfway through.
It's
here.
relevant.
It's relevant to the conversation. It is going to be the top software. It will not move from this spot.
Okay.
I guarantee
I can't
you
even
that.
argue with that.
So Wu-Tang is the reason that Final Mouse, I think, went to a web page.
I have to agree with you.
So you were talking about firmware updates. When I got this keyboard and I plugged it in and I went to the software online, it said, hey, you have a firmware update. I clicked the button. It updated the firmware instantly, and then I immediately went into the utility.
Isn't that crazy?
Where has that been? Right?
Isn't that crazy?
So think about this. You just showed me before.
You didn't even have to restart your computer twice?
I didn't have to restart it ever. I didn't even have to
Twice?
close the browser.
Oh, okay, that's actually almost surprising.
Yeah. No, so you were talking about it pre-show, but SteelSeries just released a keyboard that was $380. This Wu-Tang, which has special edition keycaps that you don't need to buy on it, was $220. And it has way better features, way better response times. It's overall,
better software.
it's lubed, which is very enthusiast. Screw-in stabilizers. Like, this is the king of keyboards for $220 just with fancy keycaps. Default, it's like $180. With the software, why would you ever buy something SteelSeries? It's
you don't
absurd.
know that Wooting exists.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only reason.
Mhm.
Why would
And
you
that's-
ever buy a different keyboard?
And when we go
they're
over...
making such good keyboards that have all the features you want in a modern keyboard.
Mm-hmm. And one day when we go over niche brands, which I think would be a fun tier list, Wu-Tang is going to be the king of the niche brands, but it's a niche brand.
They're not even that niche, but they're also too niche.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird like this. Anybody who's in the know knows that you buy a Wooting.
Yeah,
Anybody who's like an average one just doesn't buy a Wooting, and that's sad.
it is.
I
very
want them
sad.
to be the next like kings of keyboards.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have who I also think makes very good keyboards, Glorious. Now, you have no experience with Glorious. I do.
I do have something to say.
Yeah.
I know they changed their software, but they did it in such a bad way that it ended up being worse than what they changed from.
I see.
And also, it broke a bunch of stuff for people who still had to use the old software because it didn't have all the compatibility stuff for their new stuff. I just know that.
So that sounds like what Corsair Link and IQ, like what happened there. I'm going to, in that case...
Make sure your legacy products work.
I'm moving it to D tier. When I used it, it was actually very good for my keyboard specifically because all I had to do was remap something and it was like instant, and then it even tells you like how to reset the controller on your keyboard. You just like hold FN escape for 5 seconds and it reboots, and then bam, it's like reset. And it wasn't bloatware. You could turn it to where it just never initialized, and when you saved the keyboard layout, it goes across all the computers. So like it did what it needed to do.
8 megabytes of memory on there. It doesn't like cost basically anything. It's like 10 cents for the manufacturer, probably, maybe less. Like, it's not that hard to save all your settings on stuff anymore.
Yeah, I think Glorious's was I would have put it in usable.
Violently about this.
I was gonna say I would have
this.
put it in usable had you not just given that blurb, because like that is such a glorious thing to do, dude.
It's such a like 1 step back, 0 steps forward.
I'm
at the same
convinced the
time.
people that run Glorious have no brain cells. Like, they make the dumbest decisions of all time. But anyways,
It's incomprehensible.
yeah, that's a story for another time. G-Hub, trash. They're so bad.
There's
It's-
one thing I've noticed about G-Hub that I like, which is they have 10 DPI increment.
Yeah,
And that's
so,
not even that good of a feature.
So with my Superlight, I would try to increase the battery life by just running onboard memory mode. So it saved my DPI across all my computers. I didn't have to worry about that. The problem is, when I wanted to see what DPIs were set on my onboard memory mode, it is impossible to find. Absolutely impossible. And when you load it into a normal profile, it doesn't save your settings. So there was a time where I accidentally, I'll explain this in a later video, but I was playing on 10,000 DPI instead of 9.
This man plays on insane DPIs.
When you change the calculations,
He's outing himself.
It's very different. And it like, I didn't notice it. Now I just have to use 9,000 DPI. That's a different story. Also, I have a G29, Logitech G29. It's their racing wheel and pedals and shifter. And the software bricks itself so much that you have to, get this, reinstall G-Hub. Why? And they make such good esports products. The Superlight and Superlight 2,
There's
arguably
a
the best
reason
mice ever
literally they're
made.
the mice that literally 60% of people use.
Yeah. and they still have not gotten it right.
And there's a million other brands.
G-Hub has been around since like 20. I don't even know. I want to say like 16.
50 years. It's ancient.
It feels ancient too. It's so unbelievably bad.
They need a rework.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'll even let them have their little. We aren't going to go on to the online trend, which needs to happen. It needs to happen because they have like so many products that like actually like wheels and stuff that they can almost justify it.
Yeah.
But you can't justify bad software ruining your product.
Especially when it's such a good product otherwise.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
Exactly. Bad software can unironically ruin your product. If you're a small company starting out, it is almost worth just never doing software at the start. Just because you can ruin your image by having bad software.
100%. And I think that's where Wu-Ting killed it, was with the online Wutility. Freaking awesome.
Genius.
100% genius.
I couldn't even imagine that as like a thing until they did it.
Yeah. And it's like...
I was so used to having to download terrible software.
Yeah. It's like the Superlight, for me, it was such a good mouse. I still hated G-Hub. But since I was on onboard memory 90% of the time, I didn't have to interact with it, which made it okay. But if I were to buy a Superlight 2, I would just do the same thing and just hope G-Hub never messes up again.
And that way you never have to interact with it.
Exactly. So I definitely think out of the trash tier, it's probably one of the more usable ones, but it is still 100% belongs in trash tier. Something else that belongs in trash tier.
There's a reason we have two of them up there.
Yeah, so we're going to start with Synapse first because it's actually the gaming
Synapse
related
actually
one.
Does have a purpose. You do actually interact with Synapse.
Yeah.
Interact in quotes. It's more like Synapse sapping your life force like a vampire.
Okay. So I don't have much experience with Razer Synapse. I don't really own that many Razer products.
I've used a Razer mouse for most of my time.
Exactly. And from what I've heard from you and other people that use the Razer, I have had to use Cortex before, which we'll get to next. But Synapse was just, I had to change the DPI on a mouse in there. Impossible. It was impossible. And it was so bloatware. It was so bloatware.
I'm going to just real quick look at this and think to myself, it genuinely, I would have to say, it is unironically the most bloatware one up there. It genuinely feels like a virus.
I'm going to argue with you later on that point with a brand that we've been talking about all night tonight.
I understand. Don't worry. But it might genuinely be the most bloatware one up there.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that we just gave Logitech credit for selling a variety of products.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to extend the same thing to Razer. Because their software is so bad, it almost makes it unjustifiable for them to not just make a new one for every single fucking product they make. Yeah. Because it's so bad anyway. You might as well just fucking do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
The fact I have to restart my computer sometimes 2 times in order to update the software that I already don't want to interact with, and every single time I update it, you then almost treat it like it's a fresh install, is crazy, man. If you look up like tips about how to like fix something in Synapse, it's always funny that the comments underneath the YouTube video will be like, wow, it's great that it's been like 10 years and you still don't know how to make workable software.
Yep.
And you've only expanded since to make it worse.
Mm-hmm. Continuing on the Razer hate train, Cortex, which
is even worse.
I was going to say is better because their buttons do something. But you had a worse experience where I will put it under. And I'll let you explain that now.
I can't even justify Cortex's existence.
So, okay, here's what Cortex is. It's what
like
it's advertised as. If you have a bad computer, it lifts your performance. Yeah. And I haven't had bad enough computers. I tried it once on an old computer, and it freed like a gig of RAM. What does that do in the long run? Nothing. It does nothing. So
it's this move by the big ones to try to compete people like CC Cleaner, because they can then associate themselves with like, you know, the young people who probably won't know what CC Cleaner is and stuff for like cleaning their drives. Yeah. Because that's like another thing it does is it'll clean your drive, but it does it so badly that I swear to God, it's deleting like bank info at that point or something. I don't know, man. It feels like a rootkit just waiting to happen almost. It's so bad. I used it like for a year, and I didn't have problems with my like my laptop before.
Yeah.
Like, and then after, it'll just like randomly just like go into like slideshow mode whenever there's just like a couple of GIFs open.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't used to do it. It didn't used to do it. It worked fine for a year. And then I installed Cortex, and then I uninstalled it because I was having problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not been the same since. I blame Cortex. Maybe it's my own stupidity. Probably is my own stupidity.
Yeah.
But the fact Cortex was so bad that I couldn't even notice it doing something except sapping my resources and trying to sell me Razer Gold.
I was going to say, so here's the
I
thing
think the
about...
only country that Razer Gold has ever been popular in is like Thailand and Vietnam.
Yeah, maybe China.
Maybe China.
Yeah. So here's the thing with Razer Cortex. It is 100% a marketing tool because you download it. It's like, oh, I just bought my first $25 Razer headset. What else do they have? They have a software that cleans my computer that sucks and is from 2016. I should totally do that. And then it's like, oh, Razer helps me with my computer. I'll buy more from them. And then it just turns into, it's honestly a multi-level, like a pyramid scheme. It turns into a pyramid
I'll save this
scheme.
for my no usage one. I'll save this as a no usage take.
Really?
Yep, keep going. I've got something for no usage that I'll comment on.
Okay. All right. I'm putting IQ in D.
I used a Corsair keyboard. That was my only experience.
Yeah,
Felt
so
nowhere.
there was Corsair Q and then there was Corsair Link. Corsair Link was mostly for hardware, from what I know, because I used to adjust my my memories RGB in that. And then there was, it might have just been Corsair Q, I think is what it was called, or Q or something like that. And then that just did like my headset settings and the RGB in my headset and stuff like that. And honestly, I don't remember it being that bad. Still, to this day, I don't think that it is laggy software. There are pop-ups that are annoying, but it's not advertisements. It's like, it's trying to get me to install NVIDIA Broadcast so that my mic sounds better, which is actually I think that's okay. But just the software itself was kind of laggy, and just overall, it has that corporate touch to it that like Wooting and Final Mouse don't, which is why they're unusable and why IQ is in D. That's all I'm saying.
For IQ, I used it for my K70. That was the only time I've ever used it. The actual updating and the software felt about average, where felt terrible every single time.
Yeah.
But the actual like usage of it still felt really overly complicated, where you see the macro tab and you're just like, what does any of this mean? Can you not just give me like a list of like some pre-made macros, or like a place where people put their pre-made macros?
Yeah.
But when I used it to make RGB, that actually felt pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I used it to actually change some profiles. It didn't feel terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it a D.
Yep. I think
Still felt crap, but you know.
I think it belongs in... I think, personally, it might belong over Glorious, but I'm just going to leave it where it is because I haven't experienced Glorious in so long.
I've seen Glorious software, and it unironically looked really... It gave me massive Corsair vibes.
Okay.
So maybe
they're probably just the same.
The small ones all use, like, the same brand, or like the same like base like software, so maybe it really is the same. Maybe.
MSI is going to be a no usage from what I believe is both of us, aside from myself.
I've never used it.
I used MSI's. I have an MSI motherboard, and I did a BIOS update on it. And then when the BIOS update happened, it immediately tried to install MSI Control Center on my computer. And I was like, you know what? Let's see what it has. So I installed it, and it's for laptops.
They got you.
It's for laptops.
Technically, it does something for your
it's supposed
motherboard,
to,
but it doesn't actually do anything because you have a desktop.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna leave it below Cooler Master because most of it was like they used buzzwords, so it's like Frozer AI cooling,
That's
and
what
it's
they
like
always do.
Pointless, completely pointless. AI is simply a buzzword in that case because it's setting your fan curves. It was also, like, the software itself, very fast, very efficient, didn't use many resources. However, all of the features were useless.
I will say this. I think your take here is because it was, like, you know, pretty much just a, like, desktop motherboard software.
Yeah.
And I don't totally despise those because to the basic user, it can be a lot more friendly than, you know, an actual BIOS. Mm-hmm. But it just does shit that's in the BIOS. So if it's terrible software and it's somehow worse in the BIOS, that's a statement.
It's staying probably towards the bottom of not used.
Half these softwares, they just feel like they're just there to advertise me.
Yeah.
That's really all it does. Mm-hmm. Your software should not be a place to advertise.
Yep.
If I'm using your software, I'm already being advertised to by the ownership of your product and my opinion of your brand.
Yeah, so we're going to get
Razer.
We're gonna get to another brand that does that later, but Red Dragon, low key, I want to put in trash tier. I'm gonna put them at the bottom of D tier.
No usage by me. I've got to let him take over.
So Red Dragon, I think, is sort of a spin-off of TT Esports, which Thermaltake tried to make peripherals and then it just didn't really work out. So they just gave most of their stuff to Red Dragon. The software I used for my Thermaltake keyboard was granted, this is 2014, 2015 with KO Blues. So God knows how old those are. It's technically a Razer Green. The software was really not bad. It was thinking back to it, right? It totally looked like China software to where there was no design elements whatsoever, but it ran efficiently on a PC from 2015, which had a 4790K and a 960, which at the time was kind of all right. It ran efficiently. You could put your RGB, which is really all I cared about, on there, and the macro settings weren't horrible. But yeah, it by today's standards, that software is trash. But it was still more usable than Logitech or Razer, which is totally saying something. It's absurd.
I just don't get it. I used the original version of Synapse, and it was better. It was unironically better.
I imagine so. Moving on to another trash tier software that I'm going to actually put under G-Hub is Alienware.
You'd think for a company that actually has their monitor OSD pretty figured out that they would be able to make something with a better UI.
Yep. So I am actually talking in this case, kind of like the MSI one, about Alienware Command Center. So we have, in the esports room out here, we have 5 Alienware computers, which are 11, actually mostly 10th generation Intel, with one being 11th gen. And then, so 4 of them are 10th, one is 11th, and then 4 have 2060s, one is a 2060 Super. And of course, it's an Alienware. It has horrible overheating problems. So you go to the BIOS to try and change your fan curves. Guess what? They lock all your BIOS settings to Alienware Control Center. So I go, okay, this can't be too hard. I go to Control Center, and you have to install several updates in order to use it from the Windows Store, and you have to create an account. Why?
If your base level for me to use your software is account creation, it instantly goes deleted.
100%. No, and the software was so bad, even after installing multiple plugins, because there's...
God forbid you be something I almost have to use, and you make me create an account, it instantly goes to I'm not buying your product.
Exactly. So you had to install the audio plugin. You had to install the power series plugins. You had to install the thermal plugins. And there's all these different ones, and you'd install them, and it wouldn't work. So you restart it. It makes you install them all again. It was easily the worst experience of my life trying to optimize those before a massive hundreds of people LAN event. There were 450 people at that event. And
it's not like you can roll out a firmware or something that just automatically will pretty much do it for you. You have to use the software.
Mm-hmm.
You have to manually
unlike any other pre-built ever, sort of. I guess that isn't boutique. So boutique ones, I'm sure you just use whatever motherboard is in there, the BIOS from that. But all the pre-builts do this mostly the same crap, and they install all the bloatware on your computer, and it's the worst experience ever. I think this in particular also speaks for all of the other pre-built bloatware that I haven't used before. So think of HP Omen, think of CyberPower, who I imagine is probably pretty bad.
Stuff that's just rebranded, just BIOS.
Exactly. So
some of them are less bad. 90% of them are just fan curve and overclock your stuff.
Mm-hmm. And a game launcher.
And it barely improves your performance.
Yeah.
Oh man, the game launcher part's hilarious.
Yeah, so it is staying in trash. It's still not worse than Razer. And Razer worked for me, sort of.
And Razer, actually, you have to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the BIOS thing, I'll probably never interact with it a week after I've got my computer.
Mm-hmm. Turtle Beach, none of us have used it before. If the software exists, I just imagine it's bad. Think of Turtle Beach.
You just wanted to put them up there so you could shit on them. I think that's funny enough.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put them near MSI here. I think Turtle Beach is kind of coming back around. I don't know who acquired them recently, but they're doing these luxury products. And surely if they're doing $250 luxury products like a racing wheel, which is probably closer to $500, and a Xbox controller, which is $200. There has to be something with their peripherals that makes them half decent enough to where they can do that. So maybe their software is not that bad. Probably better than what MSI is putting out. But
surely better than anything Razer.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's my argument. I want to put SteelSeries below anything Razer.
I want to almost commit to the bit, but we don't have the keyboard, of making another tier at this very moment for how bloated and useless SteelSeries is.
There we go.
I use SteelSeries. I can almost vouch for some of their stuff. They actually have interesting EQ that they try to teach you how to use, that they try to make workable. But it's such bloated, bad software, and it's so evident by just how many tacked on things there. They have a fucking aim trainer in it.
Yeah. I actually remember seeing that.
Who would use the SteelSeries aim trainer? Are we too lazy to just go download aimbots on like the Steam Workshop
or Aim Labs, which
buy
is...
Kovac? I don't know. There's so many better options, and it's not even good aim trainer.
No.
It's really bad. You can tell that they just like got like the cheapest Unity assets they could possibly like get for free, and they just had the interns make it in a week.
Yeah. I think this is a good description, and I want you to agree. SteelSeries is the bastard child of any software. Because
it just serves to sell me products.
Exactly.
When you open it up to the first page, like the page it opens on the splash screen, it's just advertisements.
Yeah, and like and articles, which is just advertisements of their products.
It is their attempt to cultivate the SteelSeries brand loyalty.
Like kind of like what Razer does, but Razer does it
products
out of their software for the most part, where like they have the cult of Razer, where they don't even bring that near Synapse, because why would they do that? It's so bad.
They do actually, they put advertisements on there, and it looks like a mouse you could customize for like your settings, and it's awful.
That's pretty annoying.
It's as annoying as you think it is.
No, but just back to SteelSeries. God. So, okay, let me tell you a story. I went to Divergence. You know what Divergence is around here?
Yes.
The VR place. So they have these really cheapy, basically what I think are console SteelSeries headsets. And for the longest time, the audio was just not working. Don't know why. So I tried to install the SteelSeries software, and just trying to figure out why this headset was so bad, and like trying to find it in the software. It was like popping up stuff that I had never touched this computer with. It was like, oh, the SteelSeries ArcGIS 3, SteelSeries ArcGIS 5, and then like all the mice and keyboards, and I'm like, I haven't plugged this into my computer. Why do I have the option to customize this when I'm not looking for it?
But it's grayed out. You should be able to tell it's not there. Why is it there in the first place?
So I kept looking around, never found it. I went and grabbed another one, and it turns out it was just the headset's problem. But at the same time, it's like the software was just unusable. I want to create, like you were saying, commit to the bit. I want to create another freaking tab right here that just says SteelSeries.
I think
it's
the
unironically that bad.
Worst part is that it does have some valuable utility. It's got like the whole EQ thing in it, where you can just like plug in. I'm pretty sure like any headset.
Yeah.
You don't need like one of their like really dumb DACs, which I have no idea how effective it is, but it's just there as a paperweight on my desk.
They're probably not that bad, but continue.
Probably not that effective and probably not that good. But you know what? Anyway, where it bricks the software half the time because it doesn't know whether to give the control to the DAC. That way I can control it from that or from the software. So it makes even more issues. I had to disable one of my audio inputs to even make my headset work.
Oh my God.
And it always defaults it to my monitor speakers. It's my monitor output.
Yeah.
I mean.
So back to another different story. When I saw the SteelSeries, the first keyboard with magnets, because they're fascinated with magnets. The first keyboard with magnets they came out with was the big one, right? The full size with a few macros on it or whatever. But the thing is I feel like they knew their software was so bad that they made it to where you could use keyboard controls for like 50% of the actually important features, because they wanted this to be such a landmark keyboard and like such a legacy like product, because now they have the Apex Pro and then the Apex Pro TKL.
Really good keyboards in the past.
Yeah, and so like now they're doing all this Hall effect stuff, and so they want that feature like in its first iteration.
Desperately
Yeah, they wanted it to work. So they had a screen on it where you could adjust the pressure, and then it's like bam, that's all you have to do. And now the Apex Pro, like half of them are just bricked.
Mine doesn't work.
Yeah. So what I think
Mine
is
just
neat
does not work properly.
I
with any of
think
those codes.
the first magnet keyboard I'm talking about, I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called. I feel like it's probably called the Apex Pro.
It was
if
definitely
anything.
the Apex Pro.
Yeah. But it's the full size. It was like really silver and stuff. It was ugly as sin. But I think what you can do through the software now is you can actually update its firmware to where you could do like the rapid trigger feature and stuff like that.
That is exactly how it works.
So I think SteelSeries deserves some credit for that, but they're not moving.
No, they don't deserve any credit for it at all, because I've updated the firmware on my Apex Pro,
And that's what broke it,
still
right?
doesn't fucking work.
Yeah. Okay.
It didn't break it in the sense that I can still use it like a normal keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
but the rapid trigger that they added, they thought they were going to be really genius, like with how Razer was when they put 8K wireless on all their mice.
Yeah.
When we knew full damn well they could all do 8K wireless to begin with.
Yeah.
And that they were going to be like, oh, look, now I got rapid trigger because it's just a function of software and not an actual physical thing.
Well, Hall effect switches are the physical thing that allows rapid trigger.
I know, but it's just like software all in
Yeah.
the background that decides how it works.
Mhm.
But it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It just bricked it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to reference the Optimum Tech video where mine I can still use as a normal keyboard, but his, it literally bricked, so
Yeah.
he couldn't use it.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think, even though the execution was so poor, I think it's neat. It's literally a brownie award. Like, you tried, but it still is horrible.
You tried, and it was a brownie that had shit in it.
Yeah, I think that's probably all the SteelSeries rant. Yeah, it's so bad.
We can keep going for ages. We got to keep going.
Yeah,
We
so
got 5 more up there.
yeah, ROG is another no usage. Personally, I bet it's probably better than Turtle Beach and MSI though.
You're probably right, because I haven't used the Turtle Beach one. I honestly feel like the MSI one is probably better. Armory Crate is just BIOS again, but it's really, really asininely bad BIOS. It's got all the AI crap in it and stuff.
Yeah.
It's got the store page stuff that's terrible. But another thing it does is it has keyboard shortcuts for things like you can pull up an FPS counter and show your performance in games. And I apparently always press the hotkey for that because it's bound to Alt, and I use Alt as a push-to-talk key.
It's bound to just Alt. There's no like
There's
FN
an Alt
or
plus something else,
I
and I
see.
still do not know what it is. And somebody can call me an idiot for this, but there is no help section that I could find that tells me where it is.
or how to turn it off.
Like, there's no like thing in the software that lets me just change the key bindings for stuff. At least SteelSeries has that.
Oh my god.
Since they have recording software that just everybody uses is still crap.
For such a big company, how do you get that so wrong? Like, oh my god, that's unreal.
I Googled it and I couldn't find it. It's like the worst version. It's genuinely the worst version of NVIDIA. Everybody wants to have like NVIDIA's features, but none of them have actually managed to have any of the software talent to like actually execute it in a usable way.
Yeah, literally.
Armory Crate was terrible. When I tried to use it to change anything on my laptop, I tried to go from like a power mode to an eco mode. That way I could actually use my laptop in like a setting outside of being plugged in, and it won't change it. Because Discord apparently is using that much power, even when it's closed, even when I turn off Discord.
That's great.
I was able to change it perfectly fine once I uninstalled Armory Crate.
So, we'll continue on now. Another no usage one that we're just gonna kind of glance through here is actually Lamzu. And after looking at it pretty quickly, we determined that it's probably just Pulsar's software, but for Lamzu mice. And in that case, it's probably not bad.
It leads me back to the whole thing of what I think it is since, again, like 90% of computer mice are just made in China. So like,
Yeah.
they're probably your Logitech G Pro is probably made in the same factory as the Razer Death Adder. Like it's all going to be in the same industrial park essentially. What I think is that they make these mice so that it's compatible with like a software that they maybe designed that they can just quickly change the logo off of, that just like slightly works,
Yeah.
and is all right.
And they can change like the location of things to make it seem like it's not there, but in reality, it's probably the same like source code and everything.
Which sounds like honestly like trash talk of them.
Yeah.
But the sad part is that's literally like almost the peak of software design.
Literally.
Because they all does the same damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to turn it into an advertising product. I just want to change my DPI. The advertisement is my opinion of your product.
So I'm actually going to skip HyperX. We're going to go to Pulsar. And so I'm going to put it...
He's got Pulsar experience.
Yeah, obviously. I've referenced this in every video now. But the software experience on this X2 V2 has not been bad. It is, I would say, riding the line of D tier. I don't know, just the way it looks and like there's no like there's no help section, there's no it describes the feature for you section, like, oh, if you play this game, maybe this feature is better for you. So you have to do a lot of the research on the software yourself. But it's usable. And it's just simple. It's like, okay, I want to turn it on 2K hertz.
Yep.
Bam. I click the button. Wow, crazy concept.
But doesn't Razer Synapse do this as well? Razer Synapse does it in such a clunky, clusterfuck way. It's insane. You have to go through like 4 different tabs to find it, I swear. Whereas in Pulsar, it's like, you click to the right once and boom.
Yeah, exactly. And it's laid out in a logical way. It's not the fastest software of all time. There's a few loading bugs and stuff like that.
I guess we're going to give another one to SteelSeries. When you hover over something, it tells you what it does.
See, that's a nice feature. But on
it's not even a feature. It should just be a baseline.
Yeah, exactly. But it's on such a horrible product that doesn't matter. While on Pulsar, it would be nice to have, but overall, Pulsar has actually made such a cohesive software that I'm just going to leave it at usable, and we're going to continue on. I still think Wu-Tang probably should have its own category, just as it's because it's so good.
Software needs to just be online.
Yeah, I think the Wu-Tang needs to have its own category for how good it is. SteelSeries needs to have one for how bad it is. But I think Pulsar is just kind of riding the line of usable and like kind of crap. But I think overall it's all right. Now continuing on HyperX. Neither of us have experience in it, but HyperX Ingenuity is what it's called.
We put a lot of ones we don't have any use of. That way we could complain about the
However, I've heard it is horrible. So I'm actually...
As is so many of them.
Yeah, I'm going to put it...
so many of them.
Since I have slight experience with MSI, I still want to say it's just horrible. But I think it's one of those where, like, accidentally changing a setting will brick it to no return. Which, like, for a company like HyperX, a lot of their stuff, to their credit, is actually you don't do it through software, which I think is great. Yeah, but for their higher end stuff, so think your Quadcasts, think your Haste 2, think other stuff like that, right? A lot of software is required for that, especially for the mice. Whereas the Quadcast, if you want to change it from cardioid mode to omnidirectional, you just click a button on it, and then bam, and there's a light on there that tells you what it does. Now you can change the function of some of the buttons and the different like tapping functions you can do, but it's not necessary. So I think there has to be credit to HyperX for making so much driverless stuff, but I've heard their software is terrible and that they're honestly, from an undisclosed source, which is ironic that I actually have an undisclosed source in a show this small, they're thinking of killing the software, which is honestly hilarious.
It's that bad. I can't even blame them. The amount of driverless products out there, I hate driverless, but I actually have to give it the full credit it deserves. I would rather have a driverless Zowie mouse than like the Razer mice that I used to use. Man. Yeah. It's just so bad. It does almost the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just not good.
Yeah, I think props to HyperX for making cheap products that are easy to use and have features if you want to go that route, but you got to make the features accessible. So
there's a perfect middle ground between driverless and drivered that exists, and it's mostly down to having onboard memory.
Yep.
Pulsar does a driverless mouse that I wish I could also adjust through, their software, but
yep. Moving on to our last one before we go to the final adjustments is Sennheiser. So, to people that don't know, first of all, there's kind of 2 divisions of Sennheiser. So the first division is they say they've partnered with Drop. No, they 100% their gaming division.
Everybody already bought all their Sennheisers from Drop. I think that's like the
Exactly.
only way you could acquire them.
So I think Sennheiser's gaming division is a speculation, but they probably got acquired by Drop, and so they just make products. But otherwise, Sennheiser is a huge name in the music industry. And one thing in the music industry that absolutely breaks your products, drivers. So I believe after the no experience of using it, after being a music company, surely they have a half decent software. Now, is it on the same kind of train as the Pulsar default
I've got a
Lamzu kind of
here,
thing?
but I'll let you finish.
It's probably not on the same as like the Pulsar Lamzu train, where it's just a simple software that applies in many different places. But I imagine it cannot be that bad.
I have noticed the trend, at least in the headphones area, of like the big like music people making like a gaming headset because they're like, okay, there's this market here and everybody else in it is so like asininely dumb and unable to make a decent product. They're like,
Yeah.
we've already got this like high quality audio stuff just laying around that we're already upcharging by like 20 grand and shit.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, we might as well just go put it in there.
It's like Audio Technica, right? Yeah.
I can't remember what company it is, but they're one of the big ones, and they have a software apparently, and it's really bad. So honestly, Sennheiser, theirs may be bad as well.
It
They
might be
use
bad.
their own custom softwares that apparently they have rebranded to specifically be gamery, and apparently they are not good.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to leave them there. I have hope that they'll be okay.
We'd have to experience it.
Yeah. So I think this tier list in particular is one that we do in the future where we actually try the softwares, especially the ones in the no usage category. Maybe even get a few products to see how bad it is. But I mean,
we do that. That's going to be in what is the unboxing experience?
yeah,
like,
that is true.
half of these products' recommendation is off of unboxing experience.
Mhm.
What's it like?
So look at it one final time. I personally think that this is pretty all right.
Other than 2 tiers we would add if we had the keyboard and we're willing to commit to the bid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, closing thoughts, Wu-Tang, absolutely the king. I'll admit, I was skeptical after watching Optimum Tech and stuff like that for like the online utility. I was like, it's probably all right, but I imagine it probably sucks in some way. And there are a few gimmicky features about it that may not work from thing to thing, but they update it so much, and it's already so good by default that, again, it's really in its own tier.
Even if it was like mediocre, even if it was like the Razer thing,
Yeah.
But if Razer was just online instead of sapping my resources,
Mhm.
it might be cope, but I genuinely believe Razer in the background is using a gig of my RAM or something. Man, it's insane.
I believe
Their
it.
products is so bad. I would instantly have a higher opinion. They would go up massively.
Yep, and then, Razer and SteelSeries, I think deserve to eat shit. I think
so bad.
Logitech's software itself is honestly so bad, but at least compared to Razer and SteelSeries,
I think there's
it's
a theme here.
decently
that I just
usable.
noticed.
Yeah.
The more, because they're both actual peripheral companies. They're not like Corsair that makes fans in the background.
Yeah,
as well,
exactly.
Well, that's actually their main business, but
Well, of course, they make power supplies
whatever.
and cases and stuff too.
Everybody knows who Corsair is if
Yeah.
they're watching this.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
It's not like that. They actually focus on peripherals, and I think the more peripherals you make, the worse your software is going to get because you have to
Honestly.
accommodate so many. I just feel like they're probably underfunding their software people for such
Yeah.
a important key part of every single one of their products.
Every product, yeah. And even for Logitech, which prides themselves on being such a technologically advanced company in some areas with really good design engineering, God, G-Hub is just so bad.
I wonder if their software for their consumer mice are
Well, so
if they even have it.
think the G303. You know what the G303?
Yeah.
Wait, am I thinking of I think of the G305 is what I'm talking about.
It's the same mouse.
No, so the G303 I think is the Shroud one, where it's that is controlled through software, but the G305 is a similar shape, but it runs off a AA battery.
It's the same mouse.
So I imagine that when you kind of have a mouse that's very consumer entry level and runs again off a battery.
When I say
there's not
consumer,
too
I mean
much...
the one that's meant for business professionals, like the 3S
and like the ergo stuff and
Yeah.
whatnot. I imagine there's probably not
mouse
software.
with the ball on it.
I think that professionals just don't even use the software.
Yeah, they probably don't.
No. So now that I think about it, I'm not using it right now, but I have a Logitech webcam that Logitech has a separate camera software for, and that software was fantastic. And it's C920.
We know they've got the departments.
Yeah, it's a C920 that's from like 2012 or something, and the webcam itself is pretty bad, but the settings in the software and like the little features it has and stuff was not bad. But you can also access it through G-Hub, and that's where it gets so much worse. And I don't know how they do that, where a software from 2014 for a camera that was 2 years old at that point is actually better than Logitech's flagship software.
Is it just like the mouse people don't talk to the software people?
It's got to be.
I just don't understand how the software is so bad. I can't think of a single software that's like actually gotten to be really, really good. They just keep getting worse as we go.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it for this episode. Hot takes are out of here. Honestly, I don't feel like blurring anything, but I would give the middle finger to Razer and SteelSeries right now. Cannot believe how bad they are. Logitech still sucks, but at least onboard exists, and Wu-Ting is still the king.
Everybody needs to just start moving towards online.
Yep.
Like, I'm
Amen.
just telling you, that just feels like how it's gonna have to be.
Mm-hmm. And with that, we're gonna stop recording. So thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for episode 3.
I almost feel like doing a wave at the camera.
Dude, I have to shit so bad. Oh my god. I'm gonna go do that and be right back. But, okay, what time is it? 8:20. Alright. Wow, I wonder how long that recording was in particular. 46 minutes!